South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
I'm now joined by a resident economist, Marc Coleman. Marc, this week saw the Bank of England press pause on interest rate hikes. This comes after 14 rises in a row, taking the base rate from 0.1% to 5.25%. Some homeowners may be breathing a sigh of relief after the Bank of England's decision to pause the interest rate hikes, but many are yet to fully feel the impact of the increases that have already taken place.
They would be, and compared to the latest ECB rate hike, a lot of people here, where we have more variable rate mortgages than in mainland Europe, will be looking enviously at the pause in the Bank of England in terms of its rate rises. Not that we have as many variable rate mortgages here as we once did, but they remain a very significant chunk of the electorate more than the economy. So where I think this is taking us is that, as I hope I predicted a couple of weeks back on the show, central banks would move from having very aggressive half-point rate hikes every single meeting to having less frequent or smaller increases. And that bears this out. And I suppose the good news is that while Britain is not part of the Eurozone nor the EU, but after Brexit is more independent than it was, central banks still tend to follow each other because of the connections between currency and inflation. This is a sign that not only the Bank of England is slowing down and preparing to turn, but I believe that the ECB not long after will be preparing to turn. It's also part of a more general feeling in Britain, and I've been getting this reading, The Guardian, The Telegraph, The Spectator, The New Statesman, and the various sort of newspapers that are reflective of where that country is going, that there's a feeling of tiredness. One or two periodicals have even used the term broken Britain. And with the Conservative government, which won, I think, is it 1, 2, 3, 4 elections? It won the last 4 elections. Very hard to expect it to win a 5th election. There is a feeling that the, not quite austerity, but some of the tougher measures taken in the last couple of years, particularly motivated by climate action, are not going to help the government get re-elected. Now, of course, for the Bank of England, it is in theory independent, isn't it, and doesn't take its cue from the government. That we'd all like to believe. But, of course, if you're looking for knighthood after a couple of years of being governor, or if you want the chaps to talk to you down at the club and not give you the cold shoulder, you might want to read between the lines and do what the system expects you to do. I mean, I have great respect for the Bank of England. They're very professional people. But like all central banks, they don't get to the top of their profession without having some kind of sense of political reality. And the political reality is that, as you said, Karl, we've had 14 increases on the trot. I don't even think Paul Volcker, who was the tough guy, he was the Rambo of central bankers back in the early 80s, when you and I were beginning to get interested in these things. I don't think even he managed that. We've had an extraordinarily punishing regime of rate increases. So I think with an election approaching in Britain, I think the Bank of England can start to slow down without anybody accusing it of having been soft. It's been very rigorous over the last couple of years. And I think that it has every excuse now to slow down. And as it does, I think that's good news for us, because it will make the British economy a little bit more receptive to our exports. Britain is no longer our biggest export partner outside America. That's Germany. America number 1, Germany number 2. But Britain is still very important for our food exporters, and we want, we want domestic demand in Britain to be reasonably strong, because a lot of agri-food, fisheries, basic manufacturing depends on that, and that's highly labour intensive, and it's particularly important for counties like Wexford in the southeast. So an improving outlook, or a less disimproving outlook, for the British economy is also good news for the regional and rural economy of Ireland.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was our resident economist, Marc Coleman, and Marc will be joining us again on next Saturday's programme.
South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.